This is Audible.
Lampo Press presents Quitter by John Acuff, read by the author.
Quitter, closing the gap between your day job and your dream job. Dedication. Ellie, what should I write for the dedication of my new book? Ellie, my 7-year-old. How about to Jenny, Ellie, and McCrae, the greatest family I could ever have. Perfect. Chapter 1. Don't quit your day job. The trick to removing your clothes in a bathroom stall is to start with your shirt. A lot of people will tell you to remove the pants first, but they're wrong. If you go with the shirt, the person in the stall next to you has time to leave the bathroom on his own terms. If you go with the pants first, the pile falling on the ground assaults him. Falling pants 1 foot from your feet is traumatic at 8 in the morning. Everyone knows to test the door lock before removing any clothing, but lots of people forget the drop test on the door hook. As in, if I hang my bag and shirt on this, will it drop them to the floor, forcing me to light them on fire in my backyard? The hook is your best friend because it's nearly impossible to balance something on the metal box that holds the toilet paper. And let's not even talk about balancing your stuff on the back of the toilet. Asking a toilet to hold your shirt is expecting that piece of porcelain to perform a feat for which it is not designed. The shirt is going to slide off and wedge itself between the toilet and the wall. That shirt is gone. And this isn't the Marines. You will leave a man behind. Always choose a stall by the hook strength it offers. It took me a while to glean these nuggets of bathroom wisdom. I had to learn by trial and error. You've already benefited from my mistakes. Those insights alone are worth the price of this book. But I'm sure you wonder why I have so much experience with stripping in a handicapped stall. I was doing the reverse Superman. For a few years, I flew all over the country speaking at weekend conferences, saving lives, really. Then I would fly home through the night, ride the MARTA train to my office parking lot in Atlanta, grab a pair of khakis from my car, and head to the handicapped stall. No one suspected anything. I would then walk upstairs and disappear into a sea of cubicles, like Clark Kent at the Daily Planet. I hated that. I hated doing something I loved outside of work, feeling alive and engaged, only to have it all disappear the moment I walked through the door of my day job. I didn't hate the work per se. I liked my boss and the people I worked with. It wasn't that. I just hated that 40 hours of my week didn't feel anything like the few hours of my weekend when life made sense. I hated that my dreams had to go into hibernation every Monday morning. And so, like many other times in my life, I kept coming back to the same thought. It's quitting time. The culture of quitters welcomes you. There are 2 things I am better at than you. The first is taking off my shoes at airport security. I don't care if you wear flip-flops and fly without a single thread of luggage. I am beating you at this game. I look at the security checkpoint like the corral gate at the rodeo. I consider removing my belt, shoes, and laptop similar to the task of a bull rider roping a calf. As soon as I'm done, I throw my hands in the air and breathe in my victory. If I had my way, you'd be allowed to board the plane in the order that you removed your shoes. That would dramatically speed things up. The other thing I'm better at than you? Quitting jobs. I call scoreboard. My stats speak for themselves. I held 8 jobs in 8 years from 1998, when I graduated from college, until 2006. These weren't petty part-time jobs like the summer I was a mailman or that afternoon I spent as a carny. The jobs I quit were 40-hour-a-week, 401k offering, health insurance transferring, me in a plain-colored cubicle jobs. These were career jobs for most of my coworkers, and in a period of 12 years, I managed to quit 6 of the 8. Another I was fired from, and the other went out of business. When I gave this chapter out to some friends to read, one of their first responses was, "How did your wife not kill you when you had 8 jobs in 8 years?" And that is a very, very legitimate question. And the answer I always give is, we went to counseling. That's the simple answer. That's the short answer. But she had every right to be frustrated at my job jumping status. So that's a great question. I cultivated a high quality of quitting over the years. The first time, I took my boss out to dinner as if we were breaking up. It was amateur. It was also overkill. At no point should quitting a job involve fondue and soft candlelight. The second time, I was nervous and tossed a quitting grenade into a guy named Derek's office at Staples. I was an interactive copywriter, but had been there for an eternity. A year. I saw Derek in his office with another guy named Tom. I approached the doorway and proclaimed, "Derek, I need to give you my 2 weeks' notice." Tom stared at me. I backed out and returned to my cubicle like I had just told Derek I needed more paper clips. But by the last time I quit, I didn't have to say a word. My boss looked into my eyes and said, "Wait, John, are you quitting?" That's how good I got. No 2 weeks' notice needed. My dark mocha eyes did all the work. I used to think I was unique, that perhaps I had a problem with staying at one job for a long time. It turns out I am extremely common. A recent survey revealed that 84% of employees plan to look for a new job this year. Furthermore, the average tenure at a job is dramatically changing from generation to generation. A U.S. Department of Labor study revealed that the median tenure for the 55 to 64-year-old category is 10 years. For the 25 to 34-year-old category, the average tenure is only 3.1 years. You and I will quit lots and lots of jobs. Why? We used to stay at jobs for decades. We got a gold watch for staying at a job for 30 years, and then we retired to some flat, sweaty part of Florida to eat dinner at 4:30 in the afternoon. But somewhere along the way, that changed. At some point, we stopped being stayers and formed a long line of leavers. We started seeing motion as a sign of success and transition as a sign of progress. The golden watch has become the other end of golden handcuffs. We now look at steady jobs as less of a goal and more of a necessary evil. They aren't fun, they simply fund our lives. They are cash cows we need but don't want. There's a reason why, at the time of this writing, Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek is the best-selling career book on Amazon. The idea of only working 4 hours a week sounds appealing because the general assumption is that work is a terrible way to spend our time. Spending far less time doing something terrible is a pretty terrific proposition. I think this attitude starts when we're kids, but it really kicks into high gear when we're in college. Well-meaning but unthinking adults tell us things like, "Have fun now. Take a semester in Europe. Travel while you can." People position adulthood like it's the end of your life, not the beginning. You've had your fun. Now it's time to grow up. You've lived it up. Now it's time to start dying. The prevailing message is to do all the life-giving stuff in your first 21 years and then hop aboard the grave train. Apparently, when you're 30, Europe will be closed. They'll check IDs at the Rock of Gibraltar. If you're not in college, you can't go to Italy. You have to vacation in Boynton Beach or Branson, Missouri. So we get a Eurail pass and try to find ourselves while we can. We go skydiving or take a cooking class while we can. We buy an impractical car or volunteer somewhere that speaks to our hearts while we can. All the while, we are terrified that the real world is just around the next corner. Off the cuff, the other form of pressure we put on college is that we say it's the best years of your life, as if they begin and end in college. And you have this sense of, I have to figure out my dream and I have to live it right now because as soon as I hit the real world, life isn't going to be fun and I need to figure it out. And you see these college brochures and you think, everybody here looks beautiful. They're playing frisbee and there's a dog with a handkerchief around its neck and they have beautiful teeth. And you think, if I'm not happy yet, if by junior year or senior year I haven't figured out my dream, I'm in trouble. So while you can is only one of the many dangerous things we kind of put on pressure-wise for college. And that phrase, while you can, is a weird one when you think about it. If you are about to get married, no one would tell you, hey, make sure you sleep with a bunch of people while you can. Make sure you spend all your money while you can. Make sure you travel and have fun while you can. They wouldn't say that because that would be a terribly emo way to describe what marriage can be like. And you'd know it wasn't true because marriage can be fun. You know people who are happily married. You'd be able to uncover the while you can lies quickly if they were applied to marriage. Yet for some reason, you and I have a hard time recognizing the same lies surrounding our jobs. We buy into the lie that work is usually miserable. We buy into the lie that it's possible to separate who we are at work from who we are outside of work. We buy into the lie that to escape the drudgery, to be the person we want to be all week long, to follow our dream, the first step is to quit our jobs. It's not. Despite the fact that quitting your job is the new American dream, it's usually the worst thing you can do right now. Here's why. The Donnie Dilemma. Donnie was the worst boss I ever had. That's not his real name, but there was a bully named Donnie on my school bus when I was a kid. He used to show me the scars on his knuckles from punching kids with braces like me. One afternoon, after we got dropped off from school, he threw my book bag under the rear tires of the bus. It was run over. He might have invented the concept of throwing someone under the bus right there in Hudson, Massachusetts, that day. Either way, his name was Donnie, and it's a fitting pseudonym for my worst boss. He chewed tobacco in the office, and I wasn't working for Major League Baseball. I worked at a tech company. We were fancy and clean, except for the Coke bottle spittoon Donnie toted for his chawed dribblings. He wasn't shy about it like another boss I had who was more of a gentleman's dipper. Donnie would plant a monkey's fist in his cheek and chew away. Loud Marlboro country smacking sounds followed by wet spits. He was also incredibly abrasive, constantly berating me, his only direct report. It's rarely good when your power-loving boss only has one person to manage, and it's you. I used to get physically ill when I'd pull into work and see his car. And if I didn't see it, I would imagine he was hiding it in an alley just to mess with me. Donnie was my boss for about a year, and during that time, I was miserable. I wanted to quit so badly, I regularly daydreamed about announcing my 2 minutes notice and bolting. I longed to be free and away from him. I thought if I quit my job, I wouldn't have to deal with such a horrible boss. Wouldn't that be nice? Sayonara, Donnie. So long, control freak. So long, performance review. In this land of no Donnies, we imagine waves of freedom and awesomeness washing over us. We assume that soon everything we ever wanted to do will be available. Not all at once, perhaps. We are not that naive. But at least we won't have to check with someone before we do something. At least we'll be in charge of all the decisions. We'll be the boss, not someone else. The unfortunate truth is the land of no Donnies is just a fantasy land. The second you quit your bad boss, you get dozens of new bosses. And some are more demanding than the Donnie you just left. That can't be right. I quit. I left the land of micromanagement, the country of control freaks. I Bear Grizzled right out of there. One can no longer draw a dotted line to me in an org chart. I am my own boss, living off the corporate grid. You are, but you aren't. You may have ditched Donnie, but you really just traded him in for a dozen mini Donnies. Who are the new Dons in You Inc.? The electric bill, the water bill, Chase Mortgage, Pampers 120 packs, Verizon Wireless, Trader Joe's, Johnny's Auto Repair, Comcast Cable. All the responsibilities that were quietly and almost magically covered when you had a steady job suddenly become your new and more demanding dons. The wonderland of freedom feels more like wanderlust. Now you have a new set of worries. Now you've created dozens of tiny leaks in your lifeboat. And unless you're independently wealthy and you bought a case of this book simply as a kindness to the Acuff family, you'll spend far more time plugging those holes than steering your ship toward your dream. Inanimate objects like bills are not the only new bosses you'll acquire. If you want to really stimulate your relationships with a spouse and family members, quit your job and make them your boss. Few things are more romantic than a long, heated conversation with your wife about a $10 book you purchased online instead of checking it out at the library. It's only $10, you'll think, stupefied that you're having such conversations. Are we really arguing about how long my showers are? We've been married for years. This might be our first water bill debate. But you'll have them. I promise you'll have them. And when you're not fighting about money, which is suddenly an issue because you don't have any coming in, you'll reflect on how you spend your free time. Don't be surprised when your previously supportive spouse casts an inquisitive eye on you as you unwind in front of the television. When you had your old job, that wasn't an issue. Watch some television at night or on the weekends. Go for it. Get that downtime you need, dear. When that day job is gone, the lines between downtime and work time are blurred. It's all just time, and it's all heavy-laden and economically laced. Downtime is suddenly time you could be spending improving your resume or researching new prospects. Time you could be getting ahead of moving the ball forward. Time you should be spending not watching Mad Men, which is really just the thinking man's version of Jersey Shore anyway. Binge drinking? Check. Casual sex? Check. Northern accents? Check. Hopeless hurt inside stares? Check. You think I'm exaggerating, but quit your day job and see if your experience isn't eerily similar. A friend of mine is going through this right now. He quit his day job. He's on his own, and suddenly his wife wants to talk about how many cover letters and resumes he is sending out every day. Nothing, and I mean nothing, fires up your love life like a discussion with your spouse about whether you've met your cover letter quota. And I promise, when he had a day job, she never asked him how many reports he filed at work that day. This is one of the largest quitting landmines we fail to see. When you chase your dream, you need the support of your partner. You need that person beside you every step of the way. That part of your life, the significant relationship quadrant as it were, needs to be rock solid and stable, and in such a good place it's not clamoring about in crisis. Your dream job is loud and noisy and needs your focus, so your relationship needs to be in order to avoid the explosions. And even then, you won't avoid them all. Want to throw an easy relationship into chaos? Quit your day job. The wife who never worried about money will have fiscal panic attacks. The husband who didn't tally how you spent your time will become an ever-present punch clock. Even the most easygoing person on the planet starts sweating when you play around with things like the mortgage. All in the name of your dream. Your dream? How do dreams pay the bills? Should you just dial up your utility providers and see if dreams are an acceptable form of payment? Is there a secret free food section you have access to when you're married to a dreamer? As it turns out, no. Family ties fare no better. It's bad enough they expect you to get married young and start popping out kids straight away. Now, you'll get to discuss your income plans with your 70-year-old aunt over turkey and stuffing. Your well-read uncle will pass judgment with the mashed potatoes as he opines on the state of the economy. This is a lose-lose-lose situation. I want you to drop the Q-bomb on Donnie. I do. Just not yet. And not under the belief that doing so will usher you into a gloriously bossless nirvana. There is a wiser way to get your dream job. And it begins by keeping your day job. Keep your nose open. Since I was a third grader at Doyon Elementary, a school that to this day makes me want to say, no doy, I dreamed about publishing a book. It was the only thing I consistently thought of whenever dreams came up. Over and over again, this is what I returned to. Having dreamt about a book deal for more than 2 decades, getting that first email from a publisher was an unbelievable feeling. This was it. This was the thing I had been working toward and sweating toward. It was all coming together. And I felt like rolling around in the book contract like Scrooge McDuck in his money bin. I talked to the publisher for weeks. I had only been writing my blog for a few months, but they had picked up on what I was doing and were wildly interested. When your dream is something you started in your kitchen, it's easy to get wowed by someone real expressing interest in it. I was overwhelmed and sat in bed with my wife night after night talking it over. But something was amiss. Something was wrong. Something didn't feel right. We never want to see the worm in the apple we think is so shiny and delicious. Unfortunately, my publishing deal was indeed full of worms. Some friends who are authors confirmed how bad it was. Afraid of wrecking my dream, I went around and around on the numbers. There had to be something we could do. I held out hope, phone call after phone call, email after email. Finally, after weeks of conversations, the publisher said something to the effect of, "How about you let us publish the book without paying you anything for it? We'll sell it in stores, keep 100% of those profits for ourselves, and sell it back to you at a discounted rate so that you can sell it on your blog." In that scenario, I would give them the book for free and then buy it back from them. That's like letting someone borrow your car and then paying them to let you drive it. It was a ridiculous offer. But if I didn't have a job at that time, I'd have been in a really difficult position. When 100% of your future, 100% of your money, 100% of your dream is dependent on one thing succeeding, you are strongly tempted to compromise. You are tempted to cut corners. You are tempted to agree to less than perfect terms and sign less than perfect contracts. The risk of passing up any opportunity is extremely high. But if you have a job, even a less than ideal one, you get to say a pretty vital word: no. I didn't have to agree to their terms. I didn't have to sign that horrible contract. Sitting safely in the comfort of my less than ideal day job, I passed. I said no and walked away. You effectively lose that option when you quit. You lose that freedom when you jump without a net. You lose the power of the walkout or the shredded contract because you need this embarrassing gig. You need that horrible book deal. You need that lackluster partnership because the Dons are hungry and refuse to go away empty-handed. On the other hand, when you still have your job, you don't have to obsess about the consequences of saying no. You can instead focus on the benefits of saying yes to the right opportunities. When you keep your day job, all opportunities become surplus propositions rather than deficit remedies. You only have to take the ones that suit your dream best. Sure, you can still reject an opportunity on principle without a job, but there's a big difference in the consequences of principled rejection with a job and without one. Look no further than the births of my 2 daughters. My daughter Ellie cost about a nickel. When my wife gave birth to her at Brigham and Women's in Boston, I threw a handful of sticky cup holder coins at the receptionist, like a cheap version of Diddy. My second daughter, McCrae, cost about $1 million. We were paying for our own health care because I didn't have a full-time day job. After seeing the bill for McCrae's birth, I concluded she should have come out of the womb crying diamonds and clutching Benjamins in her baby fists. Worse than this expectation was my thought life before McCrae was born. The doctors were fearful of an abnormality in her brain and wanted to run a lot of tests. In the middle of this horrific news, I thought to myself, wow, that's really expensive. Let me repeat that so you can fully grasp what a jerk I am. My daughter needed a special ultrasound to properly assess a potentially serious medical condition. I worried about the cost. Why? Because the bill wasn't just my bill. It was my boss. The Don was demanding very high dues. By the way, kids don't get cheaper when they're older either. My friend Matt quit his day job to pursue his dream job full time. When his elementary-age daughter broke her arm, it cost his family $6,000, or a Kia, to get her treated at the hospital. So I'm grateful I found a way to close the gap between my day job and my dream. The Dons don't own me, and I get to say no when I need to, especially when it comes to things like speaking. The 5 criteria I go through when I get a new speaking request. Number 1, are they willing to pay my fee? Number 2, will I be speaking to an influential crowd? Number 3, will I be associated with other influential speakers at the event? Number 4, will I already be in the area speaking somewhere else? Number 5, is this a unique chance to share an important idea with a new audience? When someone asks me to speak, there needs to be a yes to at least 3 of those questions before I say yes to the opportunity. Otherwise, I say no. But guess what happens if I quit my day job and try to live up my dream job of speaking full time? My 5-part criterion is reduced to one overwhelming question. Are they willing to pay my fee? I lose the leverage to ask questions 2 through 5. I cash in that leverage when I quit my job. It doesn't matter if I disagree with one of the other conference speakers. It doesn't matter if the engagement is on the other side of the country and it'll take me away from my wife and kids for days. It doesn't matter if I'll have to compromise my core message to fit the crowd's preferences. I will say yes, or paying my bills will be hard that month. And my yes may not even be to my full fee. The Dons don't like discounts, but something is always better than nothing. Getting paid 50% of what I think I'm worth is a bruised shin compared to the broken nose of earning nothing that month. A desperate you and I will take that any day. This isn't in the book, but I experienced this time and time again with freelance jobs I would take, where it was clients that were difficult to work with. It was a product I didn't particularly love or believe in or feel supportive of. But in order to get through some bills, we had to take on those projects, and I had to take on a lot of clients that just I wouldn't have taken on otherwise. And so the whole idea of saying no and yes was something I learned from experience over a period of years, and to the place where when I was able to keep my day job, I got to filter out the clients I worked with. And so I worked with Chick-fil-A and folks like North Point and clients I loved who had products and ideas that I couldn't wait to write about and help them capture in videos and brochures. But prior to that, my answer always had to be yes. And so I've learned the hard way what it's like to hold on to the word no. Back to the book. To chase your dream well, you must fight to hold on to this small but significant word. Saying no is one of your most important resources, especially in the beginning. And the simplest and safest way to keep your no's is to keep your day job. Stay dangerous. It is very possible you've actually thought long and hard about quitting your job. You're in the minority of folks who have saved up money for a famine year. The threat of a dozen new dawns doesn't worry you. At least, not right away. If you quit now, there's still another landmine you've probably not considered. Remaining dangerous. I learned about this threat when my first book came out. It turns out there were some people who did not like stuff Christians like. This is understandable. It's a Christian satire of which there have been 7 written since the invention of Gutenberg's printing press. The Christian satire shelf does not exist at bookstores because it is not a category people aim for. And despite being a Christian myself and never mocking faith, the book took some risks. The first line was, "If you buy this book, God will make you rich." The first chapter was about how we Christians sometimes rank honeymoon sex slightly higher than the second coming of Christ. It was a little edgy, but family and friends were willing to laugh at this. My 70-ish aunt told me she read the book from the back to the front as soon as she saw that first chapter. She apologized for not being able to give it to any of her Bible study friends. That kind of pushback was funny. When a radio station canceled my interview after receiving the book, it wasn't so funny. They didn't like the content, and that made me nervous. Publishers don't like it when radio stations cancel on their authors. I didn't like hearing about bookstores trying to talk people out of buying it. One reader told me that when she brought it to the register, the cashier said, "That book isn't edifying." Ouch. The reason was that the content was dangerous. It was outside the norm of what is discussed within typical Christian circles. The book made people nervous, even though it was by no means controversial. Why? Because dreams always make people nervous. Dreams tend to challenge the status quo. They ask questions like, why do we do things this way? And then assert, here is a better way. No one ever says, I have an amazing dream that I am going to dedicate my life to. If it works, the status quo will be solidified forever. At the heart of a dream is change. Few like this. People get comfortable and often see dreamers as threats. We might be a culture that wants to quit our day jobs, but deep down, change still scares a lot of us, especially when it threatens the norms we've come to embrace. But if you're going to chase your dream job, guess what? You will be dangerous. You're going to threaten the status quo, and that's not for the faint-hearted. There will be a long list of people who ask you to play it safe. At every corner, with every new opportunity, will come a temptation to soften or dilute your dream. Other people will try to smooth out the edges for you. Outsiders will lob bricks. Decisions will force you to consider compromising your core idea and belief. Friends will tell you to change something, to remove part of whatever it is you're doing that's threatening because it's just not comfortable. Be careful, they'll say. And if you don't have your day job, guess what? You'll have to pacify them most of the time. You'll have to choose the safer, but less rewarding route. Remember that list of new bosses you got when you quit your job? Your bills and your financial commitments and your spouse's expectations? Well, in addition to those dawns being demanding, they're also incredibly tight and inflexible. Even if you push them back with your savings and buy yourself a few months of risky but rewarding decisions, they will eventually show their stodgy side. You might be surprised, but your monthly food budget isn't that open-minded. It's not great at embracing your vision. Try as you might to explain the huge reward a particular risk offers, your electric bill isn't going to offer you creative deferment. The only thing your new bosses will tell you over and over again is, be careful, be careful. You'll start to worry about your future. What if the people who pay for my dream don't like this idea? What if they're offended and cease being fans? Is this idea worth risking our savings account for? Is this idea worth sending our kids back to school in pants that don't fit? I was able to avoid a lot of these conversations by staying at my last day job years after I wanted to quit. I was able to skate past lots of temptations because I held on to that job. I was able to write for CNN because I had a day job. They contacted me about writing for their website. If I didn't have a day job, I might have considered the danger of talking to CNN and played it safe. As a Christian, I was well aware CNN was considered the devil's news. What if my Christian fans were super conservative and hated my association with CNN? What if churches that booked me to speak found out and canceled my engagements? I tend to be pretty conservative and saw it simply as a great platform to share my ideas. But what if other people didn't see it that way? The threat to my dreams' momentum loomed large, until I remembered I still had a day job. Even if I lost every speaking gig I had booked for the next year, my wife and kids would be taken care of. My mortgage and food were not tied to my ability to sustain the status quo with a dream that was at its heart trying to break the status quo. Instead of compromising, I got to stay true to my dream. I got to write an honest, upfront article about why Christians like me can be jerks online. Hundreds of people didn't like it. Lots of people commented on it and said some pretty hateful things. But through it all, I got to stay dangerous. I got to stay focused on doing what I had set out to do. I know it sounds crazy, but people with jobs tend to have more creative freedom than people without. Want to stay dangerous with your dream? Want to make some real progress? Don't quit your day job. Not yet. Off the cuff, this is probably one of the hardest myths we wrestle with when it comes to dreams and dream jobs, because we see the person that quits as having pulled this parachute and jumped out of a plane, and we imagine them as an artist with a beret and a scarf, and they drink latte and they just paint all the time, or they do wildly creative things. And we feel like on the other side of that, someone with a day job is chained down to their cubicle and they don't live this huge, colorful life. But I really do believe that idea that if you have a day job, if you have a sponsor or a patron to your dream, you get to really take some fun, creative risks, because the two worlds aren't tied together so closely that if you take the wrong risk, you punish your entire world. And so I really believe in that idea, although that's one of the ideas that I could see some pushback to. The real reason you should stay put. My weight fluctuates from time to time by about 20 pounds. That last sentence made it sound like I don't have anything to do with it. Like maybe the moon is the problem. It's not. It's me. Well, me and Gordo's. Gordo's is a microwavable queso dip that Walmart sells. I don't like sweets. I don't eat ice cream. But chips and queso kill me. That's easily my kryptonite. Still, I was okay for years when you couldn't make it gourmet at home. After several failed attempts at boiling and heating my own cheese concoctions, I gave up and relegated myself to periodic bliss at Mexican restaurants. Then along came Gordo's. My life changed. My beltline followed suit. I eventually looked down and shortly thereafter put myself on a slow-carb diet that included no more Gordos, which in Spanish means fat, by the way. I expected to lose weight and feel better physically, but something else happened that caught me off guard. As I dieted, I started to get more done at work. I started to write more on this book. I started to get up earlier and be more deliberate about spending time with my wife and kids. It wasn't instant, but over a period of weeks, the momentum of more healthy eating spread to every part of my life. Why? Because discipline begets discipline. When you step up to a challenge before you, your ramped up resources rub off on other areas of your life. You wouldn't think eating less fat would impact how closely you monitor your family's financial budget, but it's all tied together. Discipline and focus are contagious, and they tend to spread their benefits all around. Unfortunately, this works both ways. When you don't eat well or sleep enough, or you get upside down on a car loan, it drags down the other parts of your life. This is particularly true when it comes to quitting your day job before you should, especially for men. Men need to work. I don't just mean that in a rustle cattle and punch mountain lions in the face kind of way. I'm a writer. I do not have calluses on my hands. And workmen who make repairs on my home address my wife, who has a degree in construction management. Wrenches puzzle me. I mean men need work in a purpose kind of way. Men need a project and some progress at all times. I think women need these things too, but having spent the last 35 years of my life on the boy side of the ball, this is the role I understand. I know men in their 50s who have not held full-time jobs for decades by their own decision. They're not injured or incapable of employment. They just don't like to be tied down, and so they flitter about, freelancing now and then to make ends meet. Their marriages are falling apart. Coincidentally,